So I've been having a conversation with someone who had some follow-up questions, and they were sharing some of their experiences and their thoughts on the video that I posted earlier today. So I thought that this would be a great opportunity to clarify some things, because obviously I can't actually cover every relevant aspect of every topic in every video. So it's only so much I can say in a few minutes of video time. So this aspect was in terms of that what I mentioned in the previous video of there's no right or wrong in how people perceive an event. Now, I totally can understand how easy it is to understand that kind of what I was trying to say in that moment as being that there's no right or wrong in the world, or there's no acceptable and unacceptable. That's not what I meant. What I meant was when we experience and when we perceive things in the world around us and everything that's happening inside of us, there's no right or wrong response or way to process information or way to perceive things. Each of us is going to be perceiving and understanding and interpreting and all of these things, our worlds and ourselves and the people around us, according to who we are, what we've lived, how we understand things, what our vocabulary is, all of these things. So there's no right or wrong way to perceive something. It's just, we just perceive things as we are and according to who we are in this moment. However, that does not mean that there's no line of what is and what is not acceptable. Just because someone perceives things in a certain way does not mean that it's an acceptable way of responding to a situation or to something someone says or whatever. So let's say that you're in a conversation with someone says something and you become completely offended by what they've said, and your response to that within yourself is to get really angry, really judgmental, really hateful of this person. Everything that's happened in your life has brought you to this moment. You've made the choice, whether it's conscious or subconscious or unconscious, you've made the choice to respond in that way. Most of us don't realize that we have a choice, but that's another topic in another discussion entirely. I'm not going to go into that right now. So you respond in a certain way. The way that you responded is how it is. That's how you responded. It's not that it's good or bad or right or wrong. It just is what it is. Now the next question is, was that acceptable? Sorry, cats. Was that acceptable or unacceptable? Would you like to respond that way to similar situations in the future? What can you learn about how you responded? What can you learn about that situation? What can you learn about why you reacted that way? Why did you get angry? Why did you start judging the person? Why? And in that process, you start to develop a better understanding of yourself and hopefully of other people as well. Because the more we understand ourselves, the more it opens us up to understand other people, other people's behavior, other people's communication, how they share themselves. So this is an especially relevant and maybe timely point for the question of how do we deal with people in our lives who are abusive. Now, I've done videos on what is forgiveness, what is not forgiveness, and let me just place this right here in case you didn't watch those videos. Forgiveness does not mean acceptance. So to forgive someone or yourself for a certain behavior or thought or action is not the same as accepting that. Forgiveness is more a process of understanding why it happened, and from there what comes hand in hand with forgiveness is correction. Right. So just so that that's clear, I'm not talking about making abusive behavior okay. Abusive behavior is not okay. It's not acceptable. The question here is now, if there's someone who is abusive, let's say it's a school bully, This is probably a situation that anyone can relate to. If that didn't happen to them personally, they probably saw it happen to someone else at school. A child does not become a bully just because they feel like it. There are going to be a set of events that took place in their life that led to them exhibiting this behavior and becoming this particular embodiment of being a bully. Now, if our response to that is to point fingers at them and say they're bad, evil, naughty child and they should be punished for this behavior and it's disgusting and if that's our response to a child who is simply reflecting the behavior that they've witnessed at home, for example, or what their parents have done to them or what their parents do to each other, then is that response of punishing the child and calling them names and all of these things, is that actually going to change their understanding of themselves, their understanding of their behavior, and their ability to process the challenges they faced with in their life? No. So the point that I'm getting at is as in our society, our way of approaching abusive, bad behavior, as in pointing fingers at it and saying it's bad and it's this and that, but not actually taking steps to understand the behavior and therefore be able to support people to correct the behavior, there is a problem. So, again, I'm not saying that we should just allow abusers to be abusers and all of that. I'm saying that what comes hand in hand with changing behavior in anyone's life is understanding why they are behaving that way in the first place. So, for someone who is now facing a situation where they have been abused, however the abuse happened, whatever level or extremeness or whatever it was, we're now, let's say you're now in this position and you're trying to process what's happened to you. You're going to be hurt, you're going to be angry, you're going to be sad, you're going to feel diminished and inferior, and all of these things that you're going to go through. And when you're ready for the point of, okay, what's next, once you've worked through all of those initial responses to it, the question that's going to come up is, do I forgive the person who abused me? What can I do about what happened to me? And I'm not going to tell anyone what to do in any situation. That's for you to decide. What I can suggest is to practice that, let's call it the principle of understanding, to practice embracing the essence of who the person was who abused you, as difficult and challenging and terrible as this sounds. Embrace who they are and really look at what would have to happen in someone's life for them to behave that way. What would have had to happen in your life for you to behave the way that that person behaved? Most often, what you're going to find is that someone who is willing and able to deliberately abuse someone else has had something terrible happen in their life, whether it was a terrible childhood or whatever. You're going to see that the behavior that's put out at front, the macho or aggressive or inconsiderate or selfish or whatever the behavior is, was their coping mechanism for whatever happened in their life. And when you start to see these things, it starts becoming a little bit more difficult to hold on to the anger and the judgment and the blame and all of these things that we tend to feel towards someone who's done us harm. And again, it doesn't make their behavior okay. It doesn't make it acceptable. But it does allow us to release the emotional strands and chains that we tend to develop in response to abuse. So in that way, it gives us freedom. It allows us to let go, as well as it gives us the opportunity to really learn more about human behavior, and it allows us to ask the question of, why do people behave in certain ways, and what can be done to change that behavior? What can be done to support people to not do those things? It doesn't mean that you'll be willing or able to support the person who abused you, but maybe somewhere down the line an opportunity arrives where you may be able to support someone else, someone who's maybe in the beginning stages of a journey that may end up at a similar destination to the abuser. So that's just one scenario. I actually made notes. Let me check that I've covered. Right. Forgiving someone and understanding their behavior also doesn't mean that you have to let them back in your life. I think one of the most important things for someone to do, if they've got someone in their life, or if they have had someone in their life who was intentionally or maybe not intentionally being abusive, one of the best things you can do is set boundaries. Set very, very clear boundaries, and it's up to you to enforce those boundaries. It's up to you to determine what is and what is not acceptable in your life. And that's a very good exercise actually to do, is to start defining what is and what isn't acceptable, to start really exploring what it is you're willing to have in your life, what it is you're willing to invite in and accept in your space, and the behavior you're willing to accept from the people who you invite into your life. So all of this opened up just from that one point of trying to explore and understand this concept of right and wrong when it comes to our views of the world, our perceptions, how we understand things, how we experience things within ourselves. And at the end of the day, it's up to each one of us to determine for ourselves what we will and what we will not accept and allow. And most often, the most relevant part of that statement comes to our relationship with ourselves, what we will and will not accept to exist within ourselves, what we will and will not accept ourselves to participate in. So that's where part of the purpose and journey of self-forgiveness comes in. Understanding why we think and feel and do and say things, and then also deciding what is and what is not acceptable, and then committing to changing what we find is not acceptable and what we'd like to live differently. Right. I hope I didn't jump too much all over the place. Please do let me know if you have any questions, or if you have any thoughts or anything that's not clear. Let me know if you'd like to share your perspective, or if you feel like maybe I've missed something, or you're not sure if you completely understand something. And I will do my best to clarify. Right. Thank you for watching.